Next-gen hardware costs a fortune, yet AI upscaling and fake frames have never been more popular. Devs want to use clever tricks to squeeze out every drop of performance, and now they're using technology to fake high frame rates instead of delivering the real deal. Why are we paying $2,000 for an RTX 5090 if you're lucky enough to get it at retail, if it only hits the advertised frame rates with AI technology? And more importantly, why are we being charged a premium for hardware that can't keep up with modern games? Modern games are more demanding than ever, so naturally they require better performing hardware. But also, that means it is crucial for the game to be properly optimized. Back in the day with the game Silent Hill on the PlayStation 1, it didn't have the power to load far away areas. So the devs found clever ways to add to the game's atmosphere and the world by adding fog to the game, which also improved the performance because the render distance didn't have to be as far. Or something like adding pre-rendered backgrounds to games like Final Fantasy instead of rendering every 3D element in real time. Rendering a still image is much easier than building an entire environment in real time and rendering it, of course. But it feels like today these bigger open worlds, heavy effects like ray tracing, and in general graphic advancements are outpacing the hardware that's supposed to run them, even the latest top-of-the-line GPUs. In a perfect world, every frame you see on screen is rendered in the traditional way, by your GPU and your CPU working together to precisely calculate lighting, shadows, textures, physics, audio, and the list goes on. This process can be resource heavy, which is why devs once spent endless hours fine-tuning every aspect of a game to optimize its performance. And with today's game demanding more than ever, massive open worlds, photorealistic textures, and advanced lighting like ray tracing, each of these layers adds another puzzle piece for devs to manage. And if one of these pieces is off, then the entire experience suffers. Whether you play console or computer, it sucks for everyone, but on PC, the challenge multiplies. Developers have to account for a vast range of GPUs, CPUs, and memory configurations. That's not even factoring in different storefronts like Steam, Battle.net, Origin. Each of these has its own quirks and background processes, something like the DMR systems, which are used to control and protect content like games from unauthorized copying or sharing and piracy and all that stuff. Obviously, this is a lot of work for developers, but that's exactly why these roles are crucial for game developing. Except, now more than ever, game optimization is being neglected thanks to AI technology. Even on consoles where the hardware specs are fixed, developers now rely on upscaling technology like Sony's PSSR. And look, I'm not saying this technology isn't great. It can be when used right. For older or mid-range GPUs, this is actually a great workaround. It helps them handle modern games that they otherwise would struggle with. But the thing is that when the top-of-the-line hardware is struggling to hit decent performance without these AI tricks, it begs the question, is the real native performance worth the price? The short answer is no, at least not in my opinion. Let's say you're paying $1,000 for a mid-range GPU because in the current state of the market and with scalpers especially, it's not looking like you can get anything from this generation at least for anything under that. At least not any NVIDIA cards, which are the best cards out for gaming right now. But it's also not as simple as the hardware being expensive or not as easy to access. And it's not really the developer's fault either. The thing is that studios face deadlines and pressures to make profit, just like any other business. So they cut corners with quick fixes like AI upscaling or frame generation, claiming massive frame rates that rarely hold up once actually tested. We're seeing hardware that's powerful on paper, but still needs digital magic tricks to achieve the advertised numbers. But in today's world, this new cycle, expensive components paired with half-ass optimization, leaves us gamers paying more for less actual performance and an overall worse experience. And we'll talk about this later on in the video, but first I want to talk about the truth, the sad truth that a lot of the cost that we pay for these games goes towards marketing hype around features like ray tracing and ultra high resolution, when the real heart of the performance is in balancing resources, proper coding, and refining the game engine. Which, as I mentioned, often gets sidelined to other things like cosmetics, DLC, and whatever is going to help them sell that video game. So, as we know, developers like programmers, artists, engineers, writers, etc., they work together to build a game. They code gameplay mechanics, they create characters and environments, and whatever else goes into the game. Somewhere along the stage is where games should be optimized for the systems they will be running on, whether that's PC, Xbox, PlayStation, whatever. And as new components come out, they get updated. The problem is the publishing companies. part of the problem at least. They oversee marketing like creating trailers and ads, and to put it nicely, they heavily influence what the devs prioritize in the game's development process. Publishing companies handle the business side of things and fund the game's creation. This means that they get a say on things like the game's release date, decide where the games will be sold and published, and for how much it will be sold. But also, these publishers want to see quick returns on their investment. Take Cyberpunk 2077, for example, a game that was in development for 7 or 8 years and was really hyped up by the publishing company CD Projekt. And this game had a lot of hype around it. There was a lot of people waiting for this game. Although the game had multiple delays, it clearly wasn't enough. They ended up going for a release date of December 2020, despite being warned by the development team that it wasn't ready, especially on console. Each delay hinted that the team needed more time to complete the game, but corporate leadership insisted on shipping before the crucial holiday sales period. So the crazy hype the game generated didn't reflect the true state of the game once it released. It sold huge numbers initially because people were so excited, but the massive hype clashed with the game that clearly needed more time to be developed. This game was so unfinished that Sony ended up pulling it from the PlayStation Store and offered refunds to the people who bought it. It's not just release dates though. Other things like adding skins, DLC, or other microtransactions bring fast revenue. That's why studios prioritize these things. And on the other hand, optimizing the game so that it runs smoothly for the players doesn't bring them immediate cash. So guess which one of the two is going to take priority? Right. And there's another player or players involved in all of this, the companies that make the gaming hardware and the components like consoles and graphics cards. Take Nvidia, for example. They often market and price their products around performance numbers that aren't always as genuine as they look. Instead of delivering true native performance, they use tools like DLSS and frame generation to fake higher FPS, even though they'll market it in a sneaky way so it seems like it's native performance.
Now, with the Blackwell family RTX 5070, 4090 performance at 549.
I've covered these technologies, by the way, in another video. I'll link it above. But in short, the GPU isn't really pushing out the frames it claims. It's relying on AI to fill in the gaps. The problem is that this can give developers an excuse to not properly optimize the game and just rely on frame generation or upscaling technology to fix performance issues. It's a band-aid solution. It's become a constant back and forth between hardware makers and devs taking shortcuts. Worse yet, companies like Nvidia justify raising the prices by pointing to these artificially inflated numbers. By the way, I'm using Nvidia as an example, but companies all have their own versions of this AI technology that's proprietary to their hardware. It's also just a way for them to keep a closed system. So the same way Apple has FaceTime, iMessage, and the rest of their ecosystem to try and keep an edge against the competitors like Samsung and Google, it's all about corporate greed and being ahead of the competition. They're playing the long game, and we've already seen the early hints of this. Some games like Metro Exodus, the enhanced version or the remastered version, can't even run without ray tracing on, so it requires a ray tracing card, meaning that if you have an older card, you can't use it. And there's another problem. I mean, at this point, it's pretty common to have a ray tracing card, but you get the point. These are just the early stages of this. And there's another problem. One of Nvidia's most affordable cards, at least from this generation, the RTX 5070 Ti, or their latest generation, starts at around $900. Despite them saying it was gonna be $750, but that's a story for another video. But that's before the scalper markup. It's easily gonna be $1,100 to $1,200, if not more. By the way, they're releasing another card, the 5070 No Ti. I don't know what that's gonna cost, but the argument still stands. At this point, you're almost better off getting a console than spending more for just a graphics card that then you're gonna have to buy other components like the CPU, you know, the case, whatever. It's getting pretty bad. It is pretty bad. You might be asking, if you're still able to play games smoothly, then who cares how it's done? Well, it's not that simple. Not all games support this technology, but if you have an older generation GPU, then you just can't play games at a decent frame rate because devs are relying on upscaling and frame generation. And if you don't toggle it on, then your game might just look like shit. But if you are paying for the latest and greatest hardware, then why are you paying a premium for this hardware when it's all not even native performance and done in the software with AI? On top of that, every time hardware makers and devs lean on these quick fixes, actual performance never really improves. It's a band-aid solution that discourages real optimization and technological breakthroughs. If software tricks can patch up frame rates, there's less reason to invest in deeper engine improvements or genuinely powerful hardware upgrades. And look, I'm not saying upscaling and frame generation technologies are bad. They're great, but they create inflated expectations for players. You see an ad promising ultra-high FPS on the latest GPU, like the 5070 having 4090 performance, which is just crazy. And it's not even half the price, but again, story for another video. But that marketing leaves out the part about the AI magic doing most of the heavy lifting. It's frustrating to discover you're paying extra for performance you're not really getting, and it chips away at the trust in the entire gaming industry. And that's where we're at. Developers pressured by publishers to maximize profits and monetize the game as fast as possible, and hardware companies raising prices based on performance boosts that are artificial. And the gamers, they end up paying not with just cash, but with compromised expectations and the overall experience. But despite all of this, gaming tech, in my opinion, still has a lot of potential. Ray tracing and other AI enhancements can be good tools, but just like with any other industry, it's up to us, the consumers. We have to nudge the industry in the right direction. If we hold off on buying overpriced hardware or half-baked games until they prove that they're worth the investment, these companies will notice. Sales to these companies speak louder than words. When we support the devs and publishers who deliver solid native performance and call out the bull, change becomes possible. The gaming industry may be in a tough spot, but there is still a ton of promise in new tech and new ideas. But that's my take on all of this. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.